There we go. Little technical difficulties, but we're good now. So, obviously, we're here to talk about the Aries new moon. I don't know how it's been going for you guys, but I've definitely been feeling it. Definitely been changing a lot of things, starting a lot of things, planting the seeds, you know? It's really just that energy that we're in right now. And definitely have a lot of stuff to go over tonight. I mean, makes sense to just start with the chart, so we'll look at the chart and everything. I hope everyone is doing really well. And I hope you guys are getting ready to have a great weekend. I don't know. I'm getting ready to really enjoy this weekend. It's just been a lot of stuff that we're going through, working through, but it's all for our benefit. It's all great. Well, maybe not all great, but you got to just view it that way, right? So let's take a look here. I have it open. Just the chart. I mean, there's kind of a lot we can go down with this chart here. We'll go ahead and switch. I've been having this issue where I have to like deactivate and reactivate my camera when I switch screens here, but should be good there. So here we got the chart. Really, with this chart, I mean, there's so much to say about it just because of all of the Aries energy, of course. I really like the placement of when the moon went exact, where it has the houses. The new moon went exact. Excuse me, just all the houses there. Really, because you're getting the first house with Aries, so it's very straightforward, you know. And one of the things that really stood out to me here is that this square that we have between, I believe it's Neptune. Yeah, right there with Neptune. And Neptune is behind everything right now. And you got all these planets really starting to lead the charge. But Neptune was the one that went in first. And this really gets into the things that we've been thinking of manifesting, that we've been formulating, you know, and taking these actions on planting the seeds with. All of that in square to the Jupiter Cancer, it is bringing us out of our comfort zone. That's like it's a very comfortable placement with Jupiter and Cancer, but also I always say Jupiter is the planet of too much. So we have had the things at home that we've had to really evaluate and just change, or getting out of our comfort zones with the new things that we're starting. So I like to just say that that's in the backdrop of all of this, really. And then also, what we got with the moon there and the sun, there's that square right there to Pluto in Aquarius. So that square right there, what that really tells me is all of these changes that we have been making, that we've been called on to make in our lives, and there's been some cases where I see resistance to it. We don't want it to be a situation where it's forced, well, later down the line here, but that is where I'm seeing some people are at right now. But with most people in my life, I am seeing that there are these massive changes, especially like once we started hitting this Aries energy in the last, 2 months, really, I've seen. But yeah, definitely it's going to be transformative, all of these changes that we're making, that we're going into. And then even looking over here, I think I didn't even say with Chiron there, we're in this last leg of Chiron and Aries right now. And so there's something that's healing about this too. At the same time, we're getting this healing that's going on, and we're building this momentum as Neptune Saturate, Neptune separates from Saturn. That it's healing for us, and it's really teaching us like what we can take charge of in our lives. What we can actually change. What are we telling ourselves? What's the internal dialogue that we have going on with all of this? And just breaking free of all of that, truly. So I really love this, in terms of, it's so funny because I see this being mostly a positive for people in my personal life, but in terms of the world stage, it's like these, I don't know, death throes, we'll say. And we're going to get into that. That's like really the big thing. I really wanted to hit on how this is just hitting people in general. And also, it's really important to look at the where Aries is at in your chart. What house does it rule? Because that's really where we're seeing a lot of these new things beginning in that house of Aries. And then, with Saturn so involved in this, this is lasting for 2 years. So if like you don't have the ball rolling yet, like you have time. I don't want to say it like oh you got all the time in the world, but this is like something that's going to take process over 2 years. What's so important now is just planting these seeds, and I think a lot of people I've been seeing have been doing that are really like getting into these next stages. And it's so funny because as we're going into Taurus here, it's like the seeds have been planted. Now, what are we going to build here? What foundations are we going to build? And that even just it ties back into Saturn too with the structures. So I find that to be really really fascinating, really beautiful. Finally, good to have Neptune out of. Oh, hey, what's up, Cody? It's finally good to have I'm sorry, Mercury out of Pisces finally, because they're really I felt the vibe shift. I do have something too with Mercury the second that it went into Aries, which I found really really interesting. News story that I found. So as you can see, I've got a lot of tabs open. Um, but no, just like now that we're really starting to clear that, don't forget we've got the North Node in Pisces, so we're still hanging on to some Piscean energy, and you know, but the Piscean energy we're hanging on to, we're using it in our benefit, and then we're also kind of differentiating how we want to leave behind certain Pisces energy as we square it out, because the North Node is about like what we're leaning into, you know. And so this has been a time where we really really learn to just stop planning so much and really just trust in the universe, like let things fall into place, which has been difficult for me as a Virgo rising. So I've had the South Node on my ascendant. It's been a rough one, but it has been. It's getting into that thing I was saying with Pluto there, and well, you got the sextiles with Pluto, and then you also have that square. I didn't even mention the sextiles, so. But just that transformative nature of it. So that's the good thing about it, is once you do leave your comfort zone, there's that transformative nature. But I'm seeing like the last of this Pisces energy clearing out. Those nodes. I'm forgetting the exact date. I know it's like early summer that we got the nodes leaving. Finally. Or it might be like midsummer. It's like midsummer. I always am getting the nodes confused with Chiron because they are fairly close to each other and when they're moving. I know for Chiron, I looked earlier, it's late June. So, and this is really the thing, kind of starting to move over into the collective side a little bit. You've got all the obvious stuff with Aries and war. You've got all that, but then really just looking at the dynamic between men and women right now, I find that to be really really interesting, because we do have the resurgence of masculinity. It truly is coming back, and I think it's beautiful to see men just being men for so long. And I get what is toxic masculinity. I totally get that, but in terms of what people were calling toxic masculinity, it was literally just men being men, and wanting to change men into what? I mean, if they're not men, what are they? You're trying to change them into women, I guess, but it is good to see as we're finally clearing all of this, like men have taken a lot of their power back, and really just been okay to be themselves and not ashamed to really own their masculinity. I think it's just such a beautiful thing. But the thing is, with all this Aries energy, and what's going to be the struggle here, because of the timing of Saturn in its transit through Aries at the same time with Chiron and Taurus, it's almost like this flip where we're going to have to reach an equilibrium, because I've said since last year, I really think that Chiron and Taurus, I really think that's oh, my mom. Um, I really think with Chiron and Taurus, that is the feminine quality and feminine energy being healed. I truly think that, and I think we're going to see that, because with all this Aries energy, it's going to go a little too far in terms of, because you see this with like the whole resurgence of the trad wife and like traditional roles, but how far is that really going to go until it becomes too far? And I think that's where Chiron Taurus comes in. Like I said, that's late June. So, but yeah, I really want to look at some news stories. I mean, oh, what? The last thing I didn't cover is, because right now we don't even have the sun in Aries anymore. It was like right there in those last degrees, or I'm sorry, the moon. It did move into Taurus, so, and the sun's not far behind in a couple days here, in a few days. So really, with Venus there and all that, and then you got the sextile to Jupiter, right there. That really tells me all of this coming out of our comfort zone, the transformation that comes with it, with the changes that we've made, with the seeds that we planted, like that is going to hit in terms of the people that are coming into our lives, the ways in which we're making our money and stuff like that. There is like this benefit that's going to come, and this just it digs deeper into the foundational aspect of the Taurus energy, which is coming now that we planted these seeds. So but yeah, like let's look at some stories here. I had a couple. Since I have that fresh in my head with Mercury in Aries here, this was something that I found really interesting right here. Excuse the picture of Candace Owens here, but because I don't care about her biblical prophecy theories or anything with this. But that was the first thing I thought with the story. So bees in Israel sparking biblical prophecy, and I won't really go on to read this, but we had like right as Mercury moved into Aries, all of a sudden there was a swarm of bees that just descended on Tel Aviv, on Israel, and they were grounding planes. It was so bad, and I'm not just talking like, as far as I knew, they grounded flights for like a few hours, and just because of the bees. And I just find this interesting because bees are ruled by Virgo, the worker bee. But that's what rules bees, and the ruling planet is Mercury. I just thought that was fascinating. I even pulled up Israel's chart to see if I could make some connections like on the fly here, and I don't know, like I haven't even looked at this, so I'm just kind of like taking a glance. Like I'm not really seeing anything that sticks out right now, but at least I kind of have it in my head. We'll kind of go back to that, but I thought that was like fascinating. Okay, that's an ad. But yeah, we'll kind of get that here, and then really, okay. Let me just like go to like a full shot here, because like I really want to just talk about this. Is I always gotta like trash it because it freezes up. Just in terms of the world events we're seeing, I know today we had President Trump was claiming victory again, and it's great that Mercury is out of Pisces, because it was just like you at that point you just can't believe anything. You can't believe anything. It's insane. So, but now it's in Aries, so it's like I can at least go back to the level of believing some stuff, or on the same level, which wasn't much, but on the same level as before. I can go back to that a little bit, but it's just wild to see everyone celebrating, and he's saying the Strait of Hormuz is open again, I guess, and claiming a victory. But like, who's the one who shut it down? What was the reason it was shut down for? And so really just, I mean, it's a new moon in Aries, like this energy is lingering right here after we just had all of these failed deals under that Mercury Pisces, like the retrograde, just Mercury and Pisces in general. We had all, and this like it just messes with the communication, as we know. It messes with the communication. So like really in the backdrop of that though, we had that full moon in Libra that was opposing everything. So it was like none of these deals were going through, and then all the communication on top of that, the information that was coming out was just not accurate. It was not true. It was this gets into like the whole fog of war with Neptune and Aries, all that. But really, it's just, I think it's very telling to see who is celebrating this as a victory today. And I would take note of those people who are celebrating that as like some victory, because this isn't going anywhere. And I think I have it pulled up here actually. Let me see. I'll put my screen up if I. Yeah, here we go. I have it. Okay. So so with this here, okay, breaking. Iran's parliament speaker, oh gosh, I'm not going to try to pronounce that. I'll just end up saying something offensive. Says Trump made 7 claims in 1 hour, all 7 of which were false, adding in his new statement, "They did not win the war with these lies, and they certainly will not get anywhere in negotiations either." 2, with the continuation of the blockade, the Strait of Hormuz will not remain open. And 3, passage through the strait will only be on Iran's designated route with Iranian authorization. 4, whether the strait is open or closed will be determined by the field, not by social media. So it's just fascinating, really, because, obviously Trump is in a Uranus return. he definitely has some interesting things going on in his chart. I don't want to get sidetracked, but so there is this type of unpredictability, which is what I will touch on too. I have a theory about everything that's going on, and that's kind of the big thing I want to talk about in this stream is what my theory is on this, because I think it's I mean, it's financial. It really is. But we'll go deep on that. I just find this interesting. We're celebrating. He's saying, like, oh, we've almost got this deal going. And then my whole point, what I was getting to, is look at who is celebrating this. As far as I've been able to tell, it's all Zionist shills who are celebrating this. So interesting. Or the people, they don't even have to necessarily be Zionists, but are just celebrating the Trump administration right now. And there is nothing to really be celebrating. I mean, there might be some small thing that, like, we see later on, and I'm going to get into that because I've been highly critical of the the Trump campaign. It feels like it's still a campaign, the Trump administration, but I find that to be very telling. So another thing that's really interesting as we close out this Pisces energy, the last time we were really closing out Piscean energy, and there's a couple specific aspects I can get into, but we had the alien stuff, and I really want to, like, just bring that up. Oh, this is not the right one. Here we go. No, this isn't the right one either. It's right here. All right, so we had this, and this is kind of where there's some interesting connections here with the whole alien stuff that they're pushing on us, but also the nuclear stuff, and there's some play on this, especially considering during Mercury Pisces retrograde, the last one we had, that was before the COVID lockdowns, and what did we see happening? We saw all sorts of mRNA scientists that got killed, went missing, blah blah blah. It's been a while, so maybe some didn't go missing, but I know that there were plenty that were killed, and so right here on Polymarket, this is just, sometimes they've got some good stuff, Polymarket. I like to keep them on follow, but 10th person connected to top secret U.S. nuclear research has reportedly vanished without a trace. Okay, so the 10th person, and mind you, this was just a couple days ago, okay? And then I guess there was another person here. Well, this is another clip here. I mean, this is like a 13-second. I won't even play the audio. It's like a really shitty song. I'm not about it, but yeah. Missing nuclear official Stephen Garcia becomes the 10th to go missing. Last seen leaving his Albuquerque home with a gun, no keys, no ID, I believe it said right there. So long that. See, I told you it's a horrible song. I just can't. That's what I get for clicking on it. Anyway, there was that one. I think there was another one here. Here we go. And I think this is actually, this is recent here. This is the one I'm talking about. That was actually very recent. So another scientist, Amy Catherine Eskridge, found dead. Oh, not even missing, dead. Excuse me. I found this right before I went live. I thought it was like crazy. At 34 years old, just about my age, a little older. She had publicly warned her life was in danger over groundbreaking work tied to UAP technology. And so I don't know much about this scientist, if she is a nuclear scientist, like I thought it was fun to throw in, like I need to actually look closer at this and kind of like check out what kind of scientist she was. I'm going to bookmark this because there's a final interview that she had. That's awesome. And then we've got one more. UFO cluster spotted over mysterious base tied to missing Air Force scientist. So now we've got the UFO showing up too. Just, interesting there. So there is, and when you're looking at just the things that are going on the collective too, it does seem like they're preparing for something, and this is going to shock the financial system, and that's the next thing that I'll get into here. There's going to be a shock on the financial system, and even just bringing the astrology into it, when we're talking about, things that are shocking, that is Uranus right there, the ruling planet of Aquarius, which are both in play right now. Pluto in Aquarius, and then Uranus, it's at the last degree of Taurus, the same degree it was at, by the way, when we started seeing the UFOs last time, right before Trump got it. I did go back and look at that, the same degree. So now we're seeing the UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, they are coming back. But there's this interesting, like I've had this kind of thing, I don't know if I heard this somewhere, But like Uranus and Gemini, people talk about the whole splitting of the worlds, and I think that's very true. But then also, there's another aspect of it that I truly think is when worlds collide. When worlds collide. And it's like we're seeing this whole hidden, and don't forget, by the way, we've got Pluto going retrograde. Like I think it's like May 5th or something. It's somewhere around in there. So that's just adding a whole other aspect to this, where things are going to kind of come up, and I just really view it as that worlds colliding moment, because it really is only what, seven days until, 7 days or so roughly, until Uranus goes into Gemini. So what are we going to see, like, ramping up until that time? What's going to come out of this? And I think they really know that this is coming, and so you've seen them seeding the UFO stuff. They're seeding all sorts of things, and then also it really just looks like they're auctioning our country off. I'm just gonna be. It looks like they're auctioning off our country, and like they're just they're trying to squeeze it dry of everything until it's too late. So there is some event. You've got the elites going into bunkers and all that stuff and building their bunkers. So there is something that they're really preparing for that like we just don't know about. They clearly managed to keep it under wraps through some type of national security, like type thing, to where people can't come forward, or they're going to go to prison, or what have you. Maybe even like they'll just be offed or something, because you just see it. It seems to be well known amongst our Congress people and everything in the moves that you make, because I love to look at their money and like see what they're doing and stuff, and they're all positioning for some event, but no one is speaking out about it. And even like Joe Kent and Matt Gaetz have alluded to something like this and insinuated things like this, but it's just there's clearly some mechanism that's keeping them from coming forward about this. So I just find that to be some interesting stuff to really add on top of all of that. And yeah, let's take a look here at other, like, really the next thing I'm going to get into is like the market stuff. So I think that this could be a good spot. Yeah, this is actually perfect to start. I'm not going to play the clip because it really says everything. This is Catherine Austin Fitts. I absolutely adore her. She's great in a lot of different realms, but her, of course, main realm is finance. And she has been very vocal about this for years and years and years. And she's been on the money. She's not even an astrologer. And she's just been on the money on it all the time. So I'm going to read this here. Catherine Austin Fitts argues that Donald Trump was installed by bankers to construct a digital control grid comprised of programmable money, digital ID, and a social credit system. She maintains that Trump is expendable now that the infrastructure for this system is complete. And by the infrastructure, let's look at this. It's the data centers, the Golden Dome, that stuff, but that's already kind of in writing, and it's in the process of being built. That came in with the big beautiful bill, and it will be ready by the time we have our next main election, our next general election, not midterm. And it's actually within a couple days before, which I find to be really creepy. Let's continue here. So let's look at the control grid. There are three general baskets of what you need to do. The first is programmable money. The second is digital ID. And then the third is you need the hardware and the software infrastructure to do the social credit system. And then you even get whether or not this is true, I hear mixed things about this in China, but that they have some type of social credit system. Like I said, I hear things back and forth about it not being true, about it being true, but you have to remember their culture is also different. Like some people, because of just how their culture is, aren't going to really notice a social credit system when they're just living their lives. They're very respectful, conscious people in terms of like being part of the collective, and the type of honor they carry. But let's see here. And so you need all the data centers, but you also need a surveillance infrastructure and enforcement infrastructure to back it. So how do you persuade conservatives to embrace building that infrastructure? The way you do it is say, oh, we have election fraud, or oh, we have an immigration problem, and so we need digital ID to identify who everybody is so we can't have fraud. And of course, this is exactly what you see is going on. Either the talks have been floated out and the articles have been out there, I mean, I'm not going to hunt for those articles, but I've seen them, like just here and there interspersed. They always plant the stuff a little bit ahead of time. And then if you look at everything Trump has done to build the control grid, or put conditions in place to do it, they now have what they need. Trump is basically expendable now. And this is where it really gets interesting too, because I really, I mean, I should say I mostly agree with that. But yeah, and you know what's funny here? Look at this next one. This is okay. You know what? Hold on. I got like, I gotta change to the webcam. This is fucking wild, guys. Okay, I couldn't believe when I read this shit. Okay, look at this. Look what Musk put on. Crazy shit. Okay, this was just yesterday. Okay, universal high income, which is universal basic income, via checks issued by the federal government is the best way to deal with unemployment caused by AI. AI/slash robotics will produce goods and services far in excess of the increase in the money supply, so there will not be inflation. Like, whoa. I'm just not like, what do you say to that? You know what I mean? And it's like, a lot, sure, there's going to be a lot of people who think this is like a great idea and it's good, but what does this do to your sovereignty is really the question. And this is where we start to come up on this moment here, which I'm not saying all of this is going to be live in like a week or something like that when Uranus moves into Gemini or anything like that. But what I am saying is this is where I kind of get into this, like the world's separating, and when worlds collide, the world's colliding in the sense that things are going to come out and we're going to realize there's this other world that has been going on under our noses that we've only seen glimpses of, like people like us who will look into like conspiracy theories, who are spiritual and stuff. We've always known there's something deeper going on, but obviously to the majority of people it's going to be quite a shock. And this is where that shocking thing comes in, I'm talking about with Uranus. But also, you know I just don't, I'm trying to think of what to say here. Well, this is interesting. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Yeah, that's kind of like what we're going to be dealing with. Like I do have faith in humanity. That's the thing. Like, there's a lot of things besides God that I've lost faith in the last, we'll say, year and a half, 2 years. But the one thing that I maintain having faith in is humanity. Um, it just sucks because there are going to be the people who really want the equality, they want like the justice, all that stuff, and a lot of this stuff will look good, but it's really the infrastructure behind it that we need to look at. And this is exactly what is in the astrology right now, with that Saturn in Aries and its play with Neptune right now, is like what structure is actually like what seed is being planted to where these structures are going to be like built, because it's like new structures, it's the burning down of old structures and all that, and what is going to come in its place. This is really what we need to be concerned about. And I can totally understand the idea of a type of, I guess you could say, like Star Trek society, because if you think about it, they were essentially like like a socialist communist society, essentially. But the whole thing is they had a type of energy, like, you know what I mean? They had the technology in order to do that. They could convert energy into matter. This is how they had the food synthesizers. They could convert matter into energy in like a way that didn't blow up the whole world, because we know how to convert matter into energy. If you're talking about the atomic bomb, if it's even real, if it's even real, because the thing is with the atomic bomb, if you look into dark journalists, they have newer stuff that apparently doesn't create radiation, and even that stuff is old, because you want to talk about rods of God technology, the tungsten rods that they have, and these aren't in space, by the way. Like when Trump talks about weapons we have that people haven't heard of, it's there are plenty of whistleblowers who have been prosecuted, by the way, who have come forward talking about this technology, rods of God. Okay, it's like giant tungsten beams, essentially. I don't even want to call them rods; they're like beams that are mounted in space, and they can just shoot. They can shoot these down at an extremely fast speed and create much more devastation than a nuclear weapon ever could. So I almost think we can go back and forth on whether or not they're real, but like I just think really when you're dealing with the collective and it's whatever when if they think it's real, it's still worth addressing because it has to do it's in the conscious. And I think this is why Western astrology is in my experience the most accurate, because it is what's in like the general collective. Of course, there you get into a difference when you actually go to India, and there's a difference when you get where you get into like the Vedic. But the whole thing is it's consciousness tied, astrology, all these things. So we need to look at the things that are within the collective consciousness, whether or not we believe in those things. And so that's what I try to do. And sorry for that whole tangent there, but I just think that that is pretty wild. And this is I have this pulled up. It's not necessarily, and I'll cut to like a main shot here and tell you guys what I think about just what's going on with Trump, the whole finance stuff. We're gonna really dig deep on that, but I had like two more here to read. This was actually something I find. Look, guys. I'm not gonna like sit here and tell you not to pay your taxes. Okay, I'm not gonna like do that. But I am just gonna read this, and it's just some good food for thought to kind of consider where we're at right now. Okay, just with everything that's going on with Israel, Palestine, with the flattening of Gaza, with the genocide of Gaza, I think it's really important to kind of read this. Under the domestic and international laws of war, citizens are forbidden from taking part in a war on the side of the aggressor, obviously, and are legally bound to disobey the orders of any government that takes part in a legal war or supports acts of genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. This duty to refuse to obey unlawful government orders includes orders to pay tax. If a government uses the funds raised by taxation to wage a legal war or to commit genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes, then a taxpayer's normal duty to pay tax is reversed and becomes a duty to refuse to pay tax. And this is from the Nuremberg War Crimes Tribunal of 1946. I think this is wild. Like, we really see this going on right now. And it's not that I'm getting here to like say don't pay your taxes and all that, because it's kind of a losing battle until you have a lot of people that are willing to like put their money where their mouth is with that. Especially when they increase the amount of people with the IRS that are following up or that are enforcing the IRS codes and statutes, I will say, by the way. I won't say law. But when you have that, it's just like, I do think that this is going to come back. And I just thought it was good to put out there. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. I actually found this from Owen Schroyer, so I thought, shout out to him. He's really been the best news guy lately for me. Yeah, it looks like we went through all that. So yeah, and this is the same thing. Okay, cool. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing I want to say about this chart, by the way, with this play that's going on with Venus, this time is going to be revisited during the retrograde, because that Venus retrograde is happening in Scorpio, and I think it's happening at the end of Libra season is when it technically starts. It might be like right when it crosses, but we will have some Libra placements, which I find to be interesting. But I'm pretty sure the sun is going to be there when it goes, because I think it's like middle of October, so it should be like right towards the end. The sun right there. But we're, even if we see these things die down and like this ends up being some like victory, there's a revisitation. Like, now I don't actually think that's gonna happen right now. I actually think we're just kind of like, we'll just see this come back in some type of way, especially with the way Iran is acting and everything. But there's just this revisitation of where Venus is at right now. What seeds have you planted? When there is a shock, and I think this is when the shock, because it lines up with a lot of crypto stuff that is coming in. ISO 20022 is a law that's coming in around that time, towards the end of the year, which they've delayed and delayed and delayed because of the timing wasn't right. And I would agree that the timing wasn't right, but I really expect the first like big noticeable change in the financial system to be during that retrograde. That is my prediction on that, is that it's going to be like right in that retrograde period right there. It's going to be something with Venus retrograde coming up right now. And so a lot of us can see that happening, and we've got this manifesting in a lot of different ways in our lives here, where we're realizing like this is not sustainable, and like we can't wait on the government to help us. This was also in my Uranus predictions, by the way, on X. So, and I'll have to like share that on here. But and we need to actually make these movements. So we're gonna see, and this goes for like any like new moon to like full moon kind of cycle that we have going on. It's just that, like that 6 months difference. You do the things. It's the 6 months prior, and then you kind of see yourself go full circle on those things. So, but this is hitting us on like both a personal level and a collective level, as anything is. But in just a way that seems to line up. It's not even so much about the house that it's happening. Of course it is, but it's like whatever house it's happening in, it is getting you ready for this financial shift that's going to happen later on. And I can lay out like the evidence for that besides just something that's the ISO 20022, because I'm very well aware of the Q information, but I would not say like I'm a Q person. I can also identify like what's wrong in that information. I do think that it was a psyop to make us complacent, so I don't want to sound like a Q person, because with some of the stuff I'm about to look at with Trump, by the way, this is all stuff I can really get on, like it's all on paper. That's my thing with it. It might look like a little Q, you know? So but I've been so critical of Trump, so I need to stress that before I get started right here, that I am like very against this war. I've been very vocal, and this is not some type of cope that I'm coming up with. This is me. I was looking at all the stuff going on in Iran. I'll actually switch here just for a moment. Um, I was looking at some of the stuff that was going on with Iran, and it just wasn't making sense to me. Like I could tell that there was a financial thing going on, and I could tell it wasn't all about the Strait of Hormuz, but then it wasn't hitting for me. I'm like, no, like the elites, the powers that be, the powers that were, we should say, they always do things that make sense. And so I was looking at it, it wasn't making sense. And a lot of that was that haze of Mercury and Pisces and the retrograde and stuff that kind of kept me like from doing it. But as we started to close out, I'm like, okay, let me take a deeper look here. Now that we're this Piscean energy is lifting, I can kind of sift through some things, and I managed to find some great answers here. So I even I wrote down a couple things, because I do want to make sure I don't forget. Like I kind of made like a little list, because there's a whole thing really to go through here. But let's just like look at the war itself and how it began. So we went in there. We were saying it was for nuclear enrichment, and like we can have them enriching over a certain level. And mind you, by the way, a lot of people like actually don't know this, but the nuclear enrichment is not the same as having a nuclear weapon and being able to deploy that nuclear weapon, by the way, which is a whole nother thing. And then like and what method are you going to do? Are you going to, if another country lets you use their schematics for it, are you going to make your own type of it? And then how are you going to learn how to deploy it? Where are you going to test it? Like these are all things that people don't realize, and this is besides even the simple fact of taking the nuclear material that is highly enriched and actually being able to weaponize that. So this is like, and from my understanding from what I've looked at was, it didn't seem like Iran was going to weaponize it. It really didn't, because why would they? But now they're going to, obviously, like it, but it really didn't seem like it. And so there's that aspect of it. And then we go in, we're saying that we need to get the nuclear material, and that's what we did when Neptune first, well actually Neptune was already in Aries, but this is when we had that World War II transit that tapped in for a little bit last year, the one we're about to go into again, by the way. But of course, no, it's all solved, guys. Don't worry about it. We're all good. Like there's totally no way that the Strait of Hormuz is closed down again or anything. Like no, it's open. We're good to go. Nothing to see here, folks. No, like this is not going away. Okay, so just like we saw during the bombing last time, Uranus and Gemini, as we come back to it, it was all about destroying the nuclear material, and then, oh, we got the nuclear material, we're good to go, folks. Okay, but then how come we came back the last time? Oh no. Hey there, Robin. Um, but then I'm sorry, I like lost my train of thought. Yeah, so now going back into Iran, it's every what week we've had a new goal of the war. So the goal is constant, and the objectives they're constantly shifting and changing. So I was like, oh okay, like what's going on with this? And one interesting thing, this is something I want to like deeply verify though. I've only kind of lightly looked at it, but apparently there is like some type of differentiation with Iranian central bank. So there's where like the banks come in and stuff like that. Apparently, the Iranian central bank isn't necessarily a part of the entire. I shouldn't even say it's not a part, but the way in which it's involved with the other central banks, it can't be controlled in the same way. So that's just an interesting thing to add on top of this. But it became from we went from that to regime change was the new objective, and then after like they did get rid of Soleimani, what is it? Is that's his name? Qasem Soleimani, right? Um, Once they got rid of him, then all of a sudden you had it was like, oh well, actually, like the people need to rise up. Okay, so like the people are gonna have to do it now. And then, by the way, I think these numbers are very inflated when it comes to the people that were killed by the Iranian government. I think the numbers are super inflated. I do think it happened, but then let's look at who those people were. These are the people that, and Trump admitted this on camera, that we sent weapons to. We sent weapons to them. By the way, we had to try a couple times because like we had sent weapons, and then they just the people we sent them to, the proxy who was going to give them to, just like stole them. So that's fun. Even though we make fun of blunders like that, I should say like the Trump admin and like a lot of the what's left of the conservative movement still makes fun of like instances like that where Biden did that or where Obama did that, but it's like, okay, well, we're not going to speak up about this, so a lot of people don't know about that. Um, but yeah, like all of these people were actually people that we armed to overthrow the government. What do you think would happen if Iran sent American citizens weapons and and said, "Hey, overthrow your government," and they attempted to overthrow the government? What do you think would happen to those Americans? I don't, I think it would be a fairly similar situation. Maybe there would be a little bit less death, a little bit, but I think it would be a fairly similar situation. Hey, what's up, Janine? Um, so there's that part of it. Okay. So and then even after that, then the new objective is, oh well, we need to have the Strait of Hormuz open, and that's the objective. So the objective all of a sudden becomes something that we started this war having, and then you wonder why there are so many Americans that are honestly rooting for Iran. Like, I'm like right on the edge there. I'm right on the edge. But the thing is, us doing so poorly, like as we've done in Iran, it really sets up this new world that we're moving into, because that is what all of this Aries is a new world, you know. And then you want to combine that with like Uranus Gemini, the splitting of worlds and all that, the worlds colliding. We're moving into a new world, and the things that we're gonna learn this year, this is gonna be like a 3 year period where it's like really ups and downs and stuff. So it's not gonna be just this year, but the things we're gonna learn this year, I think, are going to shake some people to their core, honestly. While at the same time we have so many new systems coming in, so many old systems falling away. Um, but I'm getting a little off track here, a little on a tangent in terms of that. Yeah, so another thing that we saw was also, and I hope I didn't write down all of these specifics, but these are really things you can find. The person who was a great connecting force, there were a couple people, but Professor Zhang, who's being pushed right now a lot, and I like that he at least acknowledges that he's being amplified. It does make me not so weird about him and his recent blow up. But there was like this. I had all these things that were I was viewing as separate, and he connected them all for me, which was beautiful. And it really just gets into the finance and all of this, the new systems being created. But let's like just look at what exactly Trump did with Venezuela. You know, obviously we went there, took out Maduro, got the oil, but it's like, okay, so there is this thing around oil. You know, Neptune is in Aries. That is war over petroleum. It rules petroleum. It rules oil. Um, so that's like it's pretty on brand. Okay, but then like, what is like really the reason for that? Obviously, we want like, would it be to move out of the Middle East? Well, then why are we so gung ho with staying there if we needed that oil so badly? So it makes me think, and I'm gonna really get to this and add a lot to it, but I really think we're losing this war on purpose because there's that Venezuelan oil. There's the talk about Greenland, okay, and about taking Greenland, and I find that to be so fascinating because with this Greenland talk, that's a place that we can get rare earth minerals there, and then some countries in South America, all the rare earth minerals we can get from there. Like in terms of like what would meet this the supply needs or the demand needs, of the U.S. If you add Greenland into the mix, and we have control over this, which we essentially do anyway, control over the southern hemisphere, over South America in particular, of course. That takes care of that. Okay. Well, we do all of our manufacturing in China. So, okay, like where could we be manufacturing? And really, what I'm getting at here, by the way, is like moving everything into one hemisphere, into the Western hemisphere here, to be more self-sufficient and all that. And um, let me just like lay that out here. So Mexico could totally be used for the manufacturing. They have the infrastructure for it. Any additional infrastructure that we need, then that would actually, like, it would only take a year or two to really get it. But like Mexico is very well equipped in terms of actually like bringing manufacturing that would be able to supply the entire, I guess you could say, Western Hemisphere. That would work out that way. And then if you're looking at like as far as food production, that's something that we've really like we produce food, but I'm pretty sure like Ukraine produces the most food, or at least they did before the war started. I don't know, but um, so we really need to look at like essentially what we need to look at is what's going to happen if global trade shuts down or is extremely restricted. Okay, and then especially Mercury is it's closing in on Saturn right now too. And that is the commerce. Mercury is that commerce right there. So, like, what's going to happen as it crosses? You already have the conjunction with Mars and Saturn. That's actually going to come in. I did forget to mention this earlier. That conjunction. Let me go back to the screen here. Um, that conjunction, right there. Oh, sorry, right there. Uh, Boom. That conjunction. It's only going to get more and more powerful here. And then what's going to happen when it crosses? What's going to pop off with Mercury coming right behind it too, picking up speed? It may even be full speed by now, but that's picking up its speed. Well, it's not. I don't think it's full speed by now, but it's just like it's really getting there, and that rules the commerce. So you've got this Mars Saturn conjunction coming in. Like, what is about to hit the structures, the foundations? Like, what is hitting that right now? And then how is that Mercury trailing behind all of a sudden going to play into how it affects the commerce of the world? So there's that whole part of it. So the reason I'll bounce back here to what I was talking about, but the reason I bring this up, this placement. I'll go back here. Oh, there we go. My bad. The reason I bring this up though is because like this is the way that the elites are thinking. Okay, because they have astrologers, but then they also have whatever this event is that's coming up that they're aware of, whether it's something that they're imposing on the people for more control, or it's something outside of their control that they just know is coming. They know that an event is coming. So, but the whole thing is they know that there's going to be restrictions in the trade in some type of way, whether it's through the astrologers or through their knowledge of the events coming up. They know this. So they are making they're positioning and making the proper things to like happen so they can still be competitive. And you see this happening with all of them. Russia was ahead of the game on this, honestly. They became self-sufficient when they had to deal with all the sanctions, and ultimately it's made them stronger. Like, they're doing great right now in terms of having like being self-sustaining. They're doing fantastic. So, but I think we're really following that lead, and we're making sure we have control of this whole Western Hemisphere, because this is something that Catherine Austin Fitz talks about, the lady I brought up. Her theory, and I totally agree with this is something I agree with her on 100%, is that they tried the whole one world order, new world order thing, the unipolar world, and it just doesn't quite work. Like, it hits, but not quite all the way. You know what I mean? They need to have people running essentially districts. And this gets into a lot of what, like, I believe it's Larry Ellison and like Peter Thiel talk about, with wanting to have essentially, I mean, I think it was the new Alien series that came out, and it shows their life on Earth where they're ruled over by corporations. Like, they've essentially supplanted the governments. I think you can have something like that in a regional sense going on, but then, like, maybe the government still in control over like the whole hemisphere. And this gets into, this starts to get into continuity of government, that whole program, and emergency powers, which I do think is going to be a part of like some type of lockdowns that are coming this year. Like, all of this and all this stuff in Aries, especially the Saturn. I mean, like, to me that indicates lockdowns, either due to war, due to energy restrictions, due to a fake alien invasion, because who knows what the alien stuff is they're putting on us. But I'm totally getting sidetracked here. They're preparing to really just have more control over the Western Hemisphere and be more of a self-sustaining system. Then they can implement the control grid. So to really wrap that all back into the stuff that's going on in Iran, you look at some of the blunders that we've made with, like, we made an airfield that was in Iranian territory, like a temporary airstrip, and then it wasn't too far from that the pilot was like shot down, but then he didn't go back to the airfield because apparently the airfield was no longer in use, but not because the Iranians blew up the stuff that was there. No, it's because we actually destroyed C-130s ourselves, and on some other minor aircraft too, but these like C-130, apparently we destroyed these ourselves and then got out of there. But this was while there was a missing pilot, and then the Iranians found the ID of a nuclear engineer there, her military ID, and they posted this, and there's where the nuclear stuff comes up again, which is really interesting. You know what I mean? I mean, like, I guess it kind of makes sense. I mean, it makes sense she would be there, but like, it's just a very interesting coincidence. I just want to bring that part up. But then this guy is supposed to have trekked through the mountains, like up and over the mountains, and I guess it was 14 kilometers. I think that's what it was. It's been like a week or two since I looked at this, but he trekked like a long way, apparently with a broken ankle. So like, I don't believe any of that. I think we got our asses whooped, okay? And so like, what is the implication of getting our asses whooped? Well, we know that all of these people came forward, all these generals came forward. Remember all these generals that just got fired? Yeah, they got fired because they said it was a horrible idea to do this invasion, if you want to call it that. An attempt at an invasion. I think that's very clear by what I just laid out. It was an attempt at an invasion that we tried to do, and we like totally got our asses whooped because this military technology we have is not tried and true. It's just simply not. Like, if you're thinking about it's not built. Let me rephrase. It's not built for a war of attrition. This military technology that we're using, like these very expensive aircrafts that require a lot to maintain, they're good for like 2 weeks max. That's what they're good for. But they're not good for a war of attrition, a long sustained war. It becomes far too expensive to maintain these things, just to have that slight air superiority, because we got shot down. Like, we got a lot of them shot down for the first time. A lot of types that we had never, of aircraft that we had never had get shot down before. I think 2 or 3 different types. They were shot down for the first time by a low technology radar, and then a heat-seeking missile. So not even that much sophistication to it. They don't need it. They're hiding, and they got all these bases in the mountains. But really, what I'm getting at is this is. It looks to me like, okay, this could be a huge blunder on the part, but I really liked what this connecting thread was that Professor Zhang brought in. That was maybe Trump is putting forward, because you're looking at all the people that are really in the lead of these decisions. This is where I have to say I don't want this to sound like a cope, okay? This is me trying to make sense of the situation, because that is a rule I live by, is that the things that these people do, they make sense. It may take years, you may have to go back and look at it later on, but it always makes sense what they're doing. So this is helping me make sense of the situation. What Professor Zhang was saying was that this, like, let's look at Jared Kushner, who's leading all of these talks, these peace talks, and all of us are just like, what the hell? Like, why is this guy? He's like a Zionist. He's like such a swarmy, nasty human being. Like, why is this guy in with the talks and stuff? And then even people like Lindsey Graham, all these neocon war hawks, and it's like everything that Trump ran against, we're watching him do, but he is almost like letting them take the lead. Even J.D. Vance, which I found to be interesting, he sent him to go. I didn't find it interesting that he went and sent him to do that, because of what J.D. Vance is, the creation of Peter Thiel, and he needs to be palatable to the far right, essentially, which is why he's like, he's been put in a very difficult position. But I'm very anti J.D. Vance, though. I honestly think he would be worse than Trump. But that might be like why, but it's because of what I know about Vance. He would be worse than Trump, or at least Trump right now, you know. But yeah, what Professor Zhang was talking about really was, is he putting all these people, all the worst people, front and center in such a disastrous war to take the heat? Well, because you're killing two birds with one stone when you do that, if you think about it, because the deep state wants their war for the war machine. They constantly need a new war. So you please them, and they don't try to stop anything you're doing, while at the same time putting out all these people who are making these decisions. Now, don't get me wrong, Trump has made some crazy posts, stuff like that, but he's in a Uranus return. It comes with the territory, man. He's going to do some unpredictable shit, and ultimately he is a Uranian figure. So it's more often than not that he knows how to work with his Uranian energy. I'm not saying I know either way right now, but this, as I go on, this is like kind of, you'll see kind of the theory behind it. Did he put them all to in front and center, make this disastrous war to show off their bloodlust, show off Israel? Because this you have to look at the results of what we're seeing now. Israel has been seen for the insane amount of bloodlust they have. Okay, the war, even with all the propaganda that's coming out, it's pretty commonly accepted that it's bad. Like, we got our asses whooped. At least like anyone who does not watch the news anymore. And I'm talking about on both sides, which is really creepy that like CNN is nice to Trump and stuff now. And this is where you see the deep state and the war machine in effect right now, is that like CNN is just like, the war is great, essentially. I'm like, whoa, what? Okay, like, I thought everything Trump did was bad, and then the CNN gave Trump 100% approval rating. That's weird. All of these things together, I just, so really like driving this home though. Is he doing this to essentially crash the global economy and bring down transnational finance, as it's called? Bring down essentially all the financial stuff that we hate about the world, that we just like can't stand, that we're constantly put into, in this whole mentality of like constant inflation, constant like money in a pipeline going from the lower and middle class to the upper class, all of this stuff. Because look at the result of the strait being closed, and like there's these little dips and gains in the futures markets and all this stuff every time, like kind of putting that, I'm in crypto, so I don't look at like daily gains, like that doesn't phase me. Oh well, it dropped 10% when Trump made the announcement. Oh, first time? Okay, well, I've had 50% drops in one day and I still came back, so that's like child's play. I'm good. So I don't really look at these like dips and these swings in the oil market like that in the same light as other people are looking at it. But when you're looking at like what would a sustained long term oil crisis, oil shock, energy crisis do to us? Well, there's a lockdown thing that I talked about too. And I do think these things are connected, but also we would have to shift to being completely self-reliant if we wanted to maintain any semblance of what we have going here. But the financial system would look different. It would look very, like, it would look not. I'm not gonna say very different, but it would look different. This would kind of get into the ISO 20022 protocol that's coming, and it seems like all of these things are colliding for that time I mentioned earlier. So I I'm like looking at this and I'm just like, okay, well, all of this stuff that I just brought up, this is starting to make a bit more sense to me in like a purposeful crash of the system than like Trump just being off his rocker right now, because he looks like he was looking like he is looking like he's off his rocker. But I just like he has this very Gemini way about him of running two tracks at once, like running simultaneous things at once. And every time you think he's crazy and gone off like the deep end with something, all of a sudden you see why he did it. And this was one where I was like, well, I can't just like, you know, I will continue to be critical of the Trump administration because I can't be like some Q person here being like, no, like it's 4D chess and it's all part of all of it. Like it's just like I've seen too much of it and like watched too much, and now this is all starting to make sense to me. And I think that this is a very good possibility of what we see going on, a purposeful crash of the transnational finance. And the last thing I'll really get to in terms of this same thread here is you really can see it. Like, look back at the 2008 financial crisis, okay? And like how the banks got bailed out. We never really solved that issue. Like people still got their bonus. I think one person went to prison, like with one executive, but like executives still got their bonuses and all that stuff. And like this whole issue with transnational finance was never really solved, and it's looking like they're looking weaker and weaker. And so the whole thing is the transnational finance is a Ponzi scheme, and it looks like that what they want is to bring around into the fold and be able to, because you have to keep bringing more people into the fold and like have the greater growth. There's always growth. We always need to have growth. That's the whole thing, and it's like it's just not sustainable anymore. I think we're all realizing that. But bringing like I think they want to either they're trying to bring Iran into the fold to at least have a system that looks similar, that still benefits all of the people at the top in the transnational finance faction. But then you've got these two other factions to look at here, which is the tech bros, or the tech oligarchy that's going on right now. And you have to realize Elon Musk is at the forefront of this tech oligarchy, and he is part of what we would call, in a factional sense, the PayPal mafia. So to me, it's looking like new finance is getting ready to deliver the killing blow on old finance right now. Because if you look at even everything crashing and the way things are positioned, if it all did happen, you get to bail out AI or finance, but you can't bail out both. And I think when you look at the people Trump is surrounding himself, he's going to bail out AI. And this will be the control grid. This will be the new financial system. This will be all of this stuff that's encapsulating at the digital ID. And this is the new world we're moving into. A world where initially there is more control, but this will allow new technologies to come in, like a new energy form. And this is all very much on brand with Uranus and Gemini, which we're coming into. So, I think whether they want to call this new energy form like something that we're getting from the aliens and that's the reason, or whether it's going to be something, like whatever, like we've had this forever. But I do think that's a big part of this, because that's how they need to run these AI data centers, which are going to need to process all the social credit. Ultimately, I don't think they're going to succeed in this. Like, I think that they're going to like utterly fail. It's funny to hear like all of these different people who are that like experts on this stuff essentially, or just have made accurate predictions, or both, like Catherine Austin Fitts, like Professor Zhang. And actually these two in particular, it's funny enough, were the ones who said that they've said it in very similar ways. Like they they always think they're smarter than they are, and they drop the ball on something. And we saw this with COVID. We really did. That they dropped the ball. Like, they really thought they could kind of implement it, and then it became like a test run. And now this is where, the whole Mercury and Pisces ushering in the lockdowns. This is where that comes back. And there is that revisitation of the energy. And, like, I think that they're gonna just try the lockdown thing again, but it's not gonna work because simultaneously there's gonna be so much going on. So, like, it's just not good. We will have technology that we can use to break out of the technology, if that makes sense. So, and even with, like, these new energy technologies, there's plenty of patents from John G. Trump, where he's got this type of it's a type of, like, essentially like Tesla's wireless energy, but they found a way to vacuum seal these, like, tubes, and they can induce that the essentially the plasma through that in a type of over unity energy. So, like, that is something they could bring in. That's something that they could control. And if they have a control grid in, then that would at least alleviate the concerns they have of why they haven't released this technology, which is weaponization and proliferation. And I actually think that is tied a bit more to the Iranian nuclear stuff than actually nuclear stuff, personally. That's just a feeling that I've had. We'll see if that's something that comes out. But I think that's, like, the gist of what I wanted to go through. I guess I had some other kind of stuff here. What is it? Oh, this was it's so funny. I just dropped all of this because this is fascinating right here. I found this book. Okay, it's right here. So we'll just open that up again. Look at this. Okay. All right, let me move myself here or something. Can we, like, we'll make this a little smaller. Oh, whoops. Oh, come on. Okay. There we go. Okay, we're just gonna move it here. So right there. Okay, yeah, we don't need to read that part. So, okay, look at this. All right. Putin's New World Order. So this is from a book called Foundations of Geopolitics by Alexander Dugin. Okay. So this really, like, if you really think about the stuff I was just explaining, it lines up so perfectly with this. And this is essentially, this guy was evaluating the moves that Putin was making, and then, like, he came up with, like, how the world's gonna look after the what's called the fourth turning, which is based around, you guessed it, the Uranus transits, because these turnings happen every 80 years or so. So it's, like, just very fascinating, right? But so Moscow, this is the big thing too with Moscow, is they consider that they will be the third Rome, that they will take over again. And, like, I shouldn't even say, like, take over again, but, like, how would I say this? They will become a power akin to the power that they used to be, is what I should say. And you see, with them being self-sufficient, like I talked about, they were the first ones in this wave of now everyone's looking towards self-sufficiency. I think China and Africa are going to suffer the most under all of this, by the way, because really this gets into the fertilizer. Back when I was talking about, Mexico and Venezuela and Greenland, I didn't even bring up Canada. Canada has plenty of oil too. We're talking about annexing Canada, so there's that. And then also all the fertilizer we need. We have a fair amount of fertilizer, but Canada has a lot of fertilizer, so we're good in that department. So, like, it's like we're going down this list, checking all of these boxes for us to be in control of just the Western Hemisphere, not be the world's police. Although I'd say we're the world's pirates now, not police, like crazy. But anyway, USA and UK isolated from traditional Atlantic allies. So that's fascinating. And this is kind of what I get at, what I was talking about earlier. There being a restriction here in the in the global trade that, like, they know is coming or something. I'm not sure. I just switched. I'm sorry. I just switched chats. Oh yeah, yeah. That's the thing. It's, like, hard, Robin. I mean, I think this is an older chat, but that's the thing that's hard, is, like, I go back and forth with nuclear weapons being real because they act like they're very real, but it's like I have a hard time thinking we don't have at least nuclear weapons that, like, don't create fallout, because there's documentation on this. And I'm forgetting the name of the project. It's been so long, but this is something that Daniel List, dark journalist, is great at. I love it, Robin. Okay, let's see. Oh yeah, and then so yeah, so with Moscow being the third Rome, one thing I'll kind of like branch off into all the things that are here really quick. But I don't know if anyone has heard of like the Edgar Cayce material, the sleeping psychic, and when he would remote view the future, same with Rudolf Steiner, if I remember correctly, um, they both talked about how the new superpower would be Russia, would be Moscow, and they weren't talking about any third Rome terminology. I don't even think I don't know how they would have been even aware of, this whole thing because this is after their time, obviously. And it's interesting that all the elites went to all the elites went to Edgar Casey for readings for him, and there were times where he was being harassed by them. There were times where CIA, or I think at the time it was like OSS. It might have been CIA. But that agency where they would come and sit in on his just open readings and cures and all that stuff, and they were very fascinated with. I'll show you right here, this area right here, and it's like between. It's like I would say it's like kind of like the Bermuda Triangle, but not quite. So I mean, but for the purposes of this, you can think it's the Bermuda Triangle and be okay. But it's called the hot zone, and I hate to bring up someone that is kind of puts a smile on people's face or people don't take seriously. But this was a very philanthropic individual, Colonel Sanders, actually. He's a person that was like obsessed with that area. You see this with what's his name from the Beatles? I'm not cultured. I'm sorry. You'll have to tell me. I'm Bob Dylan. There we go. I think. But with like him and his lady, who was of course his handler, like they were always going there. He even bought a plot of like ocean there, and then like essentially waiting for land to rise because they talk about land rising. But I'm getting off track. They talked about Moscow being the third Rome, okay? And so I just find that interesting because it lines up with a lot of different things. And then, so let's like assume that Russia does become the new world superpower, okay? And they they team up with Iran, and that's just so interesting because look at the play going on between Russia and Iran right now. This is like old stuff. This is from years and years ago, by the way. Um, so you've got that, and then India being a Russian ally, which where is Pakistan on this? I think Pakistan gets absorbed. And then I did have a really fascinating tweet. Let me like just bounce to it really quick here. There was a crazy, it was like tweet or here we go. Look at this. Look at this. India imports millions of barrels of Iranian oil paid for in yuan. Now, if in case you don't really know much about global markets and stuff, this is a huge deal. Because up until now, this is why people always say we are the reserve currency. Because up until now, we were all petroleum oil was being paid in dollars. This is where you get like the term the petrodollar. And all of a sudden now it was paid for in yuan. That's crazy. So, and we're talking, like millions of barrels. Okay, like it's more of like a first step because like it sounds like a lot to us, but it's like, it's like it's a fair amount, we'll say, but it's not like a massive amount. But let's and I pulled this up. I heard it being talked about a little bit today, but I haven't read this. Let's like read like a paragraph or two. Indian refiners are currently paying for limited Iranian oil shipments in Chinese yuan under a temporary U.S. sanctions waiver that is set to expire within days. The arrangement covers rare cargoes purchased during a short-lived exemption introduced to ease oil prices following the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran, with Washington confirming the waiver will not be renewed. So this is okay. So this makes sense. This is why I am not hearing with Trump like losing his mind about it or something like that because it is set to expire in a few days. But it's still interesting because like, first of all, if the straits as open as we've been saying it is for what, a few days now, because we're just going back and forth and back and forth. Why would you need to do this? First of all, I know nothing of the exchange rates of that, so I don't know whether that's like more or less expensive, so I won't go down that line. But then also like this to me, if I'm gonna think like I think I've gotten fairly good at thinking like the elites and like understanding how they think. I would view this as a test run and as a backup. Like, hey, like we kind of just don't know what's going on with the petrodollar and all this stuff. Like, let's kind of do this as a show of good faith because we have this waiver due to the volatility that's going on in the strait. Like that kind of seems more on deck with me as to what's going on. But I just wanted to kind of read a little bit. Hmm. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to read a little more on that. All right. I think that was pretty much everything. I know. Oh yeah, let me go back to that map because there were a couple more things we were kind of going through. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like where India, Iran comes in right there. I find that to be so interesting. Vietnam, there's been some interesting stuff going there. I can't really delve too much into Vietnam stuff because I like to be a little more. There's some stories I could throw out, but I like to be a little more well rounded. So I'll come back to not so much Vietnam, but the Southeast Asia. You know, um, yeah, China divided into turmoil. Really, just I mean that makes sense to me because like I of course hear lots of different opinions on like who this affects and who it doesn't with the Iranian war. But what I'm thinking actually, I think there, two things can be true at once. I think the purpose of this isn't to mess with China necessarily, but it is a great side effect that comes along with it because of the moves that China has been making essentially against the U.S. I'm not one of these like people who's like China, like, but I pay attention and stuff like that. And then the other interesting thing with China, this was another point I was going to get into, and I was talking about our control, us gaining this control over the Western Hemisphere, and that seems to be the play and the move. When I talk about manufacturing, obviously computers comes into the mix with computers, and then it's like okay, so like we would need to be able to. There's something about Taiwan chips that like that's something that we are going to need, and any type of warlike situation we get into that becomes an issue. So whether it's Moscow that takes it, like in this map it's colored that way, not so sure. It's like how long could we hold Taiwan? We really couldn't hold it for that long, but we are sending ships right now. Apparently they were going and stopping in Cuba, but that's like a rumor if they're going to stop in Cuba, but ultimately they're going to the Southeast Pacific. So what's about to happen there with Taiwan? Like that's an interesting move to make. And I just bring that up because when I talk about Mexico being the new center for manufacturing for the US, I think it's just a lot of people say, well, we could never ever make chips like that. It's like, well, is there something there? Apparently, I've heard it's the sand that makes such good chips. So is it like that we're going there and like taking the factories, or is it actually inherent to the sand? Like it's tough to get a good answer on what the reason is. Oh yes, thank you. By the way, I just looked down. The Bimini Road. Yep. I love that you know that, Robin. I love all of dark journalist stuff. He's streaming right now too, so I'm gonna have to get to that. But I'm just about about done here. So I get it goes back and forth, really, with what exactly is it that makes Taiwan chips so special, but it's like I've just had this feeling, and this is more just a channeling type of thing or like a vibe that I got that we're gonna get what we need from Taiwan and move it to Mexico to make chips. And then at the same time, like when all of this happens, this is like what's in the astrology. This is what's being speculated on by. I thought it's fascinating because Dr. Zhang is not an astrologer, but this is like what we're seeing in the astrology. What I'm about to say, that is. And he even said this too, but an AI arms race. It seems like as we do that, then there is like a push and a push and a push to get AI like up to speed. And this is kind of where more of like military lockdowns come in around energy stuff, like mobilizing people, huge layoffs. We brought up that tweet from Elon Musk at the beginning talking about universal basic income for everyone. So, he's at the forefront of this. I told you he's the leading tech bro. So all of this stuff is really starting to come together. I hope it didn't seem as scatterbrained as I went into it, but I really wanted to kind of like lay all these things out and then kind of just have it all fall into place towards the end and have these connecting threads. And I would love to answer any like questions if there are, but um, I think that's like pretty much it. We can get into like the UK and Europe. UK like civil war, like we're looking at civil war. We're under the astrology of the civil war, and you think there's not going to be turmoil in the US? You know, like that's definitely coming, and so you like really need to. I just think we all owe it to ourselves to be able to have conversations with people. Like I have conversations with so many different people of so many different ideologies, and I have a very hard time. It's different within like the spiritual community, but like amongst just day to day people, a lot of people I know, there's this mentality of, oh, I could never talk to that person. They're platforming hate. I could never be around that hate. And my thing is, I have had so many friendships with people who are openly racist. Like who I start the friendship, they're an openly like racist person and openly identify as being racist. And by the end of the friend, this has happened like somewhere between 5 and 8 times in my life over my late teens into my like 20s. But I meet them and they openly identify as racist. And by the time I'm like done being friends with them, we go our separate ways. Not even like ending the friendship, but like whether it's a work colleague or like we just drift out of each other's lives or we drift out and then come back in. It's a consistent that they've always said like, wow, you changed my mind on black people, Rafi. You changed my like. I actually am like, I don't consider myself like a racist now. These things happen. So I've actually brought people into that place instead of being like, I'll never talk to you. You're hateful and like you need to be canceled and all this stuff. Like, no, we need to have conversations because if someone is racist, they got there for a reason. And do you think that you refusing to interact with them and treating them with like almost the same level of hate, really, the way that I've seen some people do it, do you think that helps their opinion of, for instance, like black people? I don't really think that helps. So like we just need to be able to have conversations with people and not be like, oh, is that far right? Oh, is that far left? Is that socialist? Is that like and actually just understand people, and like we owe it to ourselves to like maybe do a little research on the other side. Like I know a lot of people like to say like, oh, I follow both sides, and their idea of like following both sides is like they turn on like Fox News and then flip over to CNN. It's like, you follow both sides of the propaganda, but do you actually have conversations with people? I've got this amazing lady, Dr. Karlin Boroshenko, who's an industrial psychologist, and she uses her industrial psychology to analyze socialism. And I sit in there with her and I watch live socialist meetings, like actual real people, real socialists, so I understand them, so I can sit down and have a conversation with the socialists, and it's no problem. And I get where they're coming from. I understand their ideology. It's not an ideology I agree with. Same with the far right. You know what I mean? Now, I follow the far right pretty closely because honestly, that's where the action is happening in politics right now. It's like crickets on the left. I'm sorry. It is. I mean, other than standing up to Trump, which I very much respect, and organizing, there's like, I'm not seeing a lot of excitement. It's starting to come. I feel the momentum building, but unless they're able to lean on being completely anti-Israel and not taking any funding, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be very difficult for the left. I do think right now, though, they're slated to win the midterms for sure, take over the House and Senate. But yeah, those are just kind of my closing thoughts here. I can go back to like a like main shot here. But yeah, that's kind of like how I'm feeling about just this energy that we're moving into, all the things coming up, and I hope I gave like a really good type of foundation before we start moving into this Taurus stuff, of what I think is like going on and what seeds I think are being planted for the future, because I think I've really exemplified in this how this hits on the collective level versus the individual level. And it's really the same things that we have going on and the same things that we're adjusting for. So maybe with this information, you can use that to like make the proper moves. I'm not one to give people financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but like understand like you just run through your head what of mine will be affected by a shift like this in the finance. What stuff of mine will be affected? Like there's so many times where I think we do things because the older generation tells us that's what we're supposed to do, and that voice will sit in our head and say like, no, like this is, like that instruction they gave us on investing in the stock market. And like I said, I'm not telling anyone what to do with their stuff, but like just start to like ask yourself, what makes sense to me? While we still have the North Node, by the way, in Pisces, like what does the universe want me to do to make sure I'm good through all of this? Like that's really the question to ask, especially as like because we still got the Aries energy, so you can do those things, you can initiate that stuff. But like, like I guess my example I was going to say was like all of these parents, we can say like that it was like their parent told them and their parent before them told them and their all the way back like to the last time we closed out Uranus in Gemini. So like it's another turning event, like I'm saying, but like you had these generations of people who were saying, oh, like you got to just keep putting it in the stock market, keep putting it in the stock market. Do you understand the mechanisms of how the stock market works, how these management funds work? What happens during this shift? Do you think they're like, oh, well, we got people, we got to keep their stuff up? Or do you think they will take everything that they can and say, fuck you? I think it's the latter, personally. And I think it's just something to really think about. Like, where do I have my stuff? Should I, would I? And really, I think the bigger question is, would I be comfortable watching it go down 50, 60, 70%, and then waiting for it to go back up on the conditions of, under the conditions of a completely new financial ecosystem that's coming in? It's just worth thinking about, but I hope everyone really, I tend to get a little heavy. I tend to, be a little, I think I was pretty tame, actually. I can definitely get worse, but I really hope that everyone likes the analysis of this. I expect more analysis, like more of a bigger analysis like this is like every like week or two. But I'll definitely be putting out more content. Website is almost live. The website is going to be nightslight.ai. It's not up yet though. I have to buy the domain. It's expensive. It's like $160. I've almost got it. And then I will also, I'm going to be on like other platforms too. I'll be streaming on Twitch, like doing, I mean, I'll probably do stuff like this on Twitch too, but I'll be doing gaming. I'm going to be putting stuff on TikTok here, a lot more shorts on just like, look, when I find little things like this isn't little, but like when I find little things as in like all the parts I brought together, I can kind of put those out individually on TikTok. And yeah, in terms of like readings, there will be quite a few different types that I do and everything. Feel free to like take a look at that when it's up. I will let everyone know when that's up. It should be within about a week here. I've just been I just spent a lot on a whole new office, so kind of like now just scraping money together as it comes in and putting it into the business. So thank you everyone for watching, and I hope you have a good one.